As always, welcome to Lorena's Labyrinth today. If you're not familiar with the channel or myself, my name's Anna, and of course Lorena's Labyrinth is my baby, and I create these videos. I share with you the information that I've gathered about crystals over the years, particularly the ones that I love. I try and focus on crystals that have been part of my collection or where I've interacted with people. Bit of a long story there. I had a collection many years ago that went walkabout at the end of the day. So I'm currently rebuilding and re-experiencing a lot of the crystals. So when we talk about serpentine, I'll talk about that in the moment. For now, though, I'll stay on track because I recognise we're going to have new people to the channel watching the video and hopefully returning people as well. So for those of you that are new to the channel, welcome aboard. I hope you'll stick around. Whether you're new or old, please do click like if you like the content. That would be really appreciated. It helps to keep me motivated and inspired. Now, where was I going with this? Okay, prime example is I go off on a bit of a tangent. Sometimes I forget my where I'm at and I go off on a bit of a wander. This is atypical for the readings that, or not the readings, the videos that I do. So what I do to address this is I recognise time's important for everybody. So I put timing chapters in the description so you can just jump to the places that are of interest to you or to you. What else was I going to say? I do transcripts in case people are interested. I do them, but what happens is I tend to move away from them and go off on those tangents like I said. And this is largely because I think I've become resistant to the whole concept of AI voiceovers. I'm just so sick of hearing the same perfect narrations or perfect imperfect. It just does my head in. So I want to try and keep these videos as authentic and real as possible so that people can tell there is a real person sitting behind the screen. You're not seeing me, but you can recognise that actually I'm not an authority on everything. I have an understanding of some things. I share that with you willingly. I invite you to share your experiences with me and other people that come and visit the channel as well, because this is all part of us growing and developing. Anyway, back to where I was right at the beginning, which was welcome to the channel, new and old. Thank you very much for being part of my journey. I'm going to jump straight in now and get talking about serpentine. So sadly, I actually don't have any serpentine anymore. That's part of what I lost, but I did have some. I carried it with me for many years. My collection went walkabout probably about 2016, 2017, and the chunk that I had was actually what we call the rough. It was in the rough, and it was from Madagascar, if I recall correctly. So it had a very nice olive green, kind of yellowy type green that we see in this image here with the mottling. Anyway, it was one of the first purchases for my collection. I think it was actually one of the ones that I first bought that was actually in the rough. Before then I'd been buying polished eggs and pendants and that kind of thing. But either way, it was a crystal that I actually loved. Now, just for some extra information, it's given the name serpentine because it reminded whoever it was that found it originally or who gave it the name of the snake skin. Now, it also reminds people of the lizard skins, which is why you see in this image here, I think that it's been carved as a chameleon. Sometimes you will see it marketed as Korean jade, but of course it's not Korean jade, it's actually serpentine. Other times fraudsters might try and pass it off as actually being jade or another crystal by the name of nephrite jade. Nephrite jade is, from what I recall, I'll do a video about that. I've got some pieces of it here, but it's not actually jade as we imagine jade to be. But anyway, it doesn't really matter if the fraudsters are trying to pass serpentine off as jade, because they're actually very distinctive crystals, and it's quite easy for a person who's done buying to differentiate between the serpentine and between the nephrite jade, especially if they know what they're looking for, which is why I always say do your homework. So for everybody's information, what I've seen is that serpentine as a crystal is most often associated with Gemini, or recommended for those people that fall under the star sign of Gemini. And apparently this is particularly because it offers grounding and balancing properties. But at the same time, it's also been linked to Scorpio, Capricorn and Sagittarius. I'm serious, okay? It's considered to be beneficial for people that were born in the year of the snake. Well, that would be me, which is probably why I actually really like it, if there's any truth to this kind of stuff. Whereas for myself, I tend to say I just stick with that. If you feel like you're drawn to a crystal and you want to have it, it doesn't matter what your star sign is. And when I talk about drawn to it, I don't mean just seeing an image and thinking, well, that's pretty, unless you've got a lot of disposable income. You know, when we talk about being energetically drawn to a crystal, it actually conveys some kind of physical sensation to us. One of the things it's believed to have, and why it's recommended for those of us born in the year of the snake, is it's said to have calming and soothing energies and to promote emotional balance and inner peace. But we will be talking about the metaphysical properties next. Only from an overview perspective, though, I've got slides that go into more detail further down, which if you want to jump straight to that, you'll find the timing in the description, like I said. So from an overview perspective, serpentine is considered to be a stone of transformation because it does apparently have the attributes. I say apparently because we can't make claims. Okay, it clears and purifies the aura, and it also clears and balances the chakras. So it's also said to awaken the Kundalini, which sits at the base of the spine. And of course, once you're doing this kind of thing with your chakras and your auras, then you start to get that access to the psychic gifts. So it's considered to open and activate the psychic gifts. What I do like about it is this idea of the higher consciousness of the brother and sisterhood. If you're not actually aware of what that is, what that means is that we start to acknowledge that what we do to another person is going to have a consequence upon us, even if we don't physically get it. You know, we do to one, we do to all. So if I try and hurt you, then ultimately I'm hurting myself, because you and I are both one. At some point, you know, it might only be that in a namaste spark, but we're both part of the same mass. So therefore, when I hurt you, I'm hurting myself. But the other thing is too, that sometimes I'm now going off down one of those tangents that I was talking about. But I had a conversation the other day, and it ties in to this subject as well, which is sometimes we can do something to another person and we don't actually feel that specific pain, but what we then have to deal with after that is we might be filled with guilt over our actions, even if they were justified. You know, even if somebody's done something horrible to us and we feel quite validated in responding with a lack of love and lack of kindness towards that person, we might be harsh with our mouth and say stuff that is unpleasant, justifiably, but unpleasant. And then we think, I'm better than that. Afterwards, it's like, I can't believe I degraded myself to that level. I wish I'd maintained my decorum, all of that kind of stuff. So we carry a burden of guilt or self-doubt afterwards. So this is part of the reason of that higher consciousness and trying to be the best person that we can be within any particular situation. So anyway, the other thing too is there's something about serpentine that does actually activate this desire to be of service and to help other people, particularly if they've gone down into the doldrums and a dark pathway. I should have put the energy blockages where it's supposed to dissolve them up there underneath the aura on this slide, because this is part of the clearing and the purification of the aura, where it does shift away any blocks that might be there. And you know, there is another thing that I actually believe there's an association with serpentine that's not on the slide here. When we talk about serpentine showing a person their life path, we're actually also, because I think I worked this out just by looking at this slide, we've got the removal of blockages and we've got the showing and the clearing of the path. We're actually talking about a connection here, if anybody's aware of it, to the Indian god Ganesh, the little elephant god, okay, because he's a path clearer. So if you're into Ganesh or wanting to access the energy of Ganesh, you might want to do it while holding a piece of serpentine, would be my suggestion. So just a reminder, big disclaimer here, I'm not a geologist, I'm nothing, I'm no qualification in regards to rocks, minerals, gems and that kind of stuff. This is the slide that I do my research on to try and give you a certain amount of information. It doesn't necessarily mean I understand it. And this is why I'm saying I just don't know what a phyllosilicate is, really. And that kind of stuff's a little bit technical. You can feel free to have a laugh if you want. It's supposed to be part of the subgroup. Oh, I do actually understand this because I learned this the other day. Subgroup kaolinite serpentine. Now, the reason I didn't know, I found it very recently, kaolinite is actually a very fine white clay that if you've seen my yarning video that was recorded this Sunday, so a couple of days ago, I actually have an image of the azurite sunstone on it, and that nests on the kaolinite, the pure stuff, so it's white actually. So now I understand this, that when we're talking about serpentine, we're talking about a mixture of serpentine, kaolinite, or whatever, and that explains to me why it's such a soft crystal, you know. I mean, it's only 2.5 to 4, so it's very easy to break. So kaolinite, if I'm pronouncing it properly, just for your information, it's almost powdery actually. I'm not going to go too much into it. Just suffice to say that explains why serpentine is so soft. Now, anyway, besides the fact that it is not a very hard crystal at all and it's going to be easy to break, it does come in varying shades of green, and they can be the yellowy green that you saw in the original slide. There can be certain bits of brown, it can be even a bit olivey green, and it can have bits of black or the white. Now, I would say the white actually is the kaolinite, but I could be wrong. When it comes to translucency, it can be translucent to, or it is translucent to opaque. Very rarely is it transparent. I have never even seen it like that. It does have a waxy type sheen to it in my experience. It's another one of those ones where if you look at it, your brain feels like you could just scratch it like you would a candle, but actually you can't because it's a rock. Now, I don't know really where it is sourced. I know definitely in Australia. I saw it from the UK and US. I'm almost 100% positive that the bit that I had was from Madagascar, but I could be wrong about that. Either way, when it comes to toxicity, this is worth recalling, especially if you're one of those people that likes to make elixirs, is that while serpentine in itself is not actually considered to be toxic, depending on where it's sourced, it can lie close to deposits of asbestos, in which case it may contain asbestos. And frankly, I just, if there's a risk of that, I just wouldn't bother making an elixir out of it. So as far as buying tips go, I guess the first thing to acknowledge really is that because serpentine has a lot of uses, and it does, it's not just about making jewellery. It has been synthesised in a laboratory, and I say supposedly is what I saw, supposedly for research purposes. It is fairly abundant, and it's not usually, I find this interesting, not usually used for jewellery items, probably because it breaks so easily. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't find small pieces, certainly if you're buying online, such as beads, sold as, oh, this is the, I'm looking at my notes here, so this is probably why I shouldn't look at them. You can find small pieces online, such as beads sold as synthetic serpentine. Interesting. Okay, so that would be the lab-created stuff. So it's not necessarily fraudulent, but it's not the stuff that you dig out of the ground. My notes here, as I said, in regard to fraud, it's more likely not so much with people trying to sell you serpentine that's not real serpentine. It's more likely that people try and sell you some jade when it's actually serpentine. I decided to put in these images here, and I'm getting in the practice of this as part of giving all of us, including myself, a bit of an eye to what we can expect when we look at sources. Okay, so when we look at this image here, we see that you've got the interesting, almost crystalline, it looks a bit crystalline, that image of the serpentine from Sweden. It doesn't really seem to have the mottling But if you look at the image on the right, you've got that from Poland, where it does have the dark green and the lighter green. What I found fascinating, I didn't actually realise that Sticktite in serpentine was found in Tasmania, Australia. And apparently, I think, I'm not sure about this, it might be the only place that it comes from. The reason I say this is because Sticktite is actually a town, apparently. Let me check my notes. I think really just mentioning, Sticktite in serpentine has been called Atlanticite as well, and is associated with, for those in the metaphysical world that get into it, it's associated with Atlantis and the magic of Atlantis, which is why it's particularly popular. I'm not going to talk too much about that one at the moment, because I actually feel that when it comes to healing properties and the metaphysical attributes, there's actually a lot that is credited to Sticktite and serpentine because it mixes the two. But anyway, if you take a look at the top image on the right, you see the serpentine that is found in Australia. I've got to be honest, I don't have an image of the other serpentine that I've seen that is Australian, because it doesn't look like that. This is all about sources, really, isn't it? All of the serpentine that I've seen has had mottling in it, and by that I mean the spots of darker green and lighter green. I haven't seen it like this particular image here, where it's almost a flat colour. But if you have, let us know, leave a comment. So where serpentine is considered to be a stone of transformation, of course, it's associated with new beginnings, new pathways, and opening up of a new way of being, a new life, if you like, a new way of viewing the world. So it's definitely associated with expanding the spiritual awareness, opening it up, opening the mind up to develop, I guess, a heightened understanding of some of the spiritual concepts. Now, we talked about consciousness and the brother and sisterhood, but we're also talking about a collective consciousness, one that's more humanitarian, greater empathy, mercy, kindness towards others. I mentioned about the aura, purifying and lightening that, raising the vibration of the personal aura. It's also credited with opening up a person to be able to reflect on their past in a way that doesn't get them stuck in the past. It's a grounded approach to reflection. It's very practical. It's like, what happened? Why did it happen? What could I have done differently? Did I add to the problems? Being really honest with ourselves as part of developing the learning of what we want to take forward in our life for that new beginnings and breaking of patterns, I guess. So it's also said to support a person to be able to access the higher realms, to attune and connect to their guides and guardians. When we talk about the life path and clearing it, we're also talking about revelations of the purpose and meaning of our individual lives within the whole. And this is the capacity to access the Akashic records is how I pronounce it. That might not be correct. You might pronounce it differently, each to their own. So it's the other part is that it's associated with manifestation, and I think this is what makes it a completely beautiful crystal. It's what you hold very dear to your heart. It's those things that carry great meaning for you. Like if your whole heart has been crying and yearning towards being able to do a job, to earn money in ways that fuel, I guess, your self-esteem, where you feel like a good person or that you're making a change or a difference to people in the world, it will help you to develop that if that's what you want to do. But it's also said to help manifest things, including relationships, and if you're trying to manifest your divine partner, a romantic relationship, a spiritual relationship, it's said to support the manifestation of that. Now, past life recall is actually really important, whether that is to do with current life or previous life. So when we talk about recalling, understanding and healing past life, sometimes we're talking about healing the traumas of our childhood, because that's past life in the present life. But other times we might be trying to work out what is the root cause of perhaps phobias that create a lock and a block for us in the current life. So the other very interesting thing that I find with serpentine is it acts as a protector. It shields the aura against taking on board other people's views, which I did mention that, it's very easy to do that, is to hear somebody else's opinion and think, yeah, okay, that makes sense to me. I'll take that on board without actually reflecting, does it feel right, does it feel true? So it protects and shields a person against that so that they can develop their own personal truth. And it is also believed to protect and guard against dark and malevolent, if I can say it, energies, or even malicious intent by people around us who might be seeking to be malicious. So there is that added bonus. It's supposed to connect you through to Mother Nature, Gaia, Earth, and the Nature Kingdom. We've already good Lord, what am I saying? We've already talked about Kundalini and the psychic gifts. But when it comes to work and career, because this is related to manifestation, there is apparently the belief of the realization of those work-related goals. So when it comes to the physical and emotional attributes, just a reminder that you would not disengage from your treating professionals if you've got any of these conditions and you're trying to heal them or you're working with them to manage symptoms. You would stay engaged with your doctors and your medical professionals, and that includes if you've got psychology or psychiatric professionals as well. But what you could do is use the crystal, including serpentine, as a complement to your treatment. So if you're dealing with any of these conditions, you might want to consider investing in some serpentine. And I used to keep mine out in the main living area. Actually, it was a big piece, a big rough piece. It wasn't something that I could wear or anything like that, but if you've got a tumbled stone, you could wear that. We'll talk about how you can use it later. But either way, I'm not going to go too much into the detail here, just to say that it's got diversity attached to the physical properties. I'm interested in the metabolism, actually, and the immune type stuff. A lot of these kind of things that are represented here. This actually explains to me from a position of hindsight as to why I was drawn to serpentine, because back in the day when I actually bought this, and I remember making my purchase, it was at a time when I was very, very unwell, and because I have an immune disorder, and it's related to my metabolism as well. So it had got out of control at that particular point in time. So it's fascinating now to do the research on its properties from a reflective space and thinking that makes absolute sense to me, that I actually would have been drawn and attracted to serpentine back in the day. And in fact, I know where I can get some now locally, and from somebody that actually mines it and pulls it out the ground. And I think I'm going to try and put in a purchase for that as well. I'll try and get a piece so I can have it as back in my collection. Anyway, moving on from this. So you see here that there is a whole range of emotional and attitudinal or psychological benefits that are attributed to serpentine as well, which I think is particularly attractive. So where there are people that are suffering from conditions such as extreme mental illness or disturbances, or even psychosis, apparently it helps them to shift through that and to be able to discern the truth and reality, as opposed to obviously delusions of the mind. I've mentioned the self-awareness and self-development before. The other attribute is dissolving sorrow, that darkness, to lighten the spirit, shall we say, to lift the burdens, and to heal emotional wounds, which is really good. So I can see that this would be beneficial for people who have got a history of trauma, shall we say. And when we talk about the dark emotions, we're talking about those ones that can cripple us and block us from going forward, Anger, some anger is healthy because it sort of fuels the passion and the drive and helps to build momentum. But that really awful anger, which is directed outwards at people or towards self and is quite toxic, things like loathing, they're considered to be dark emotions. So either way, even when a person is going through a difficult situation, serpentine is said to be able to help a person to find the blessings in whatever their situations are. And in this way, it has the capacity to liberate them emotionally and supports this healing of those deep emotional wounds, moving past the pain and forward into a more pleasurable life. So where there's been relationship breakdown, it's also recommended as part of healing the mind and the heart, and this is to get you ready for a new beginning, because it is associated, remember, with manifestation of new relationships. And if you're going to start a new relationship, you don't want to take all that painful, yucky stuff with you. So other people who might benefit would be those that suffer from turbulent mood swings and mood changes. So that might be people that have bipolar type conditions, or other behavioural disorders. So positively, it uplifts your attitude. It makes a person apparently more enthusiastic, clears away any self-doubt, and raises a person's self-esteem, because once we start making these decisions and we become confident, we're seeing the consequences of our actions having positive results, we feel better about ourselves, we trust ourselves, we get more confidence in the decisions that we make. But so I think it's worthy of mention too, that this new confidence comes in, particularly when moving from one social environment and social circle into another one. So when we also talk about the benefits of love and compassion when it's related to Serpentine, we're talking about this capacity and, I guess, confidence and comfort in being able to express, physically demonstrate love and affection and compassion, as well as verbally express it. There's a purification of thoughts involved and beliefs, helping dissolve limitation, giving clarity of mind, decluttering this busy mind, and that's all part of enhancing decision making as well. I'm sort of a bit dubious about mentioning this one because it is YouTube, not because I've got an issue with it personally, but I'm going to say that it is actually recommended for those people that struggle. When I say people, I'm talking women here, the female big O, shall we say. So if a person struggles with the big O and they're a female, then they might want to invest in that, perhaps put some under their pillow. And I think that's probably all I can talk about here. So just briefly, when we talk about the chakra links with Serpentine, you're going to read, of course, diversity at different times of people's viewpoints and opinions, and this is where it's important to reflect and ask yourself what feels right. So for me, upon my own reflections, I think it's more than just the heart and the higher heart, which would be the natural leap, I think, to make because of the green, the associations of the green, and even the yellow, right? So we're talking about confidence and all of that, the associations. Oh, let me think, how would I phrase it? Okay, so when we talk about the yellow chakra, we're talking about stepping into personal power, okay? No longer playing the victim role in life. We're walking forward in our power authentically and with love, the capacity to express love. So that's the higher end of the chakras. When we go into the communication and seeing, we're talking about the throat and the brow. And when we're talking about understanding, we're talking about the crown. So to me, I see Serpentine associated with all of the chakras, very much so, actually. So, of course, when it comes to how we would use Serpentine, it has been used in a variety of ways, across cultures, across industries. I'm puffing because I just had to run to the door, sorry. It's often been used and polished, as I said, into beads and cabochons, ornamental type objects. They're very appealing. Apparently they're easy to shape because of the softness. What else have I got here? Basically, just look, you could have it like this carved, or you could be like me if you're into them being in their rough. You could certainly have it on a sideboard or whatever within your house and on open display. But if you've got soft furniture, as I recall, you might want to place a doily or something underneath your Serpentine if you're going to put it out in the environment as part of clearing the energy of a room and that. Alternatively, yes, you could have it as the tumbles or the spheres or whatever to hold in your hand. You can do that also with the rough as well. A little bit of jewellery doesn't go astray, and if you're into gridding, you could use it in different shapes and forms. I don't know if I haven't got any tumbles of it, but I will try and get some tumbles, I think. Anyway, if you've got any ideas, let us know. So I'm going to go to the transcript here as far as the message goes, because when I type up these, I actually do spend time reflecting on it when I'm doing it. So my notes say that, look, there's probably more to the picture. The primary message for Serpentine is, if you're drawn to it, there's more to the picture than what you might actually be seeing right now. And it's a reminder that, you know, you're not doing anything wrong, but rather if you're trying to manifest things and those visions and dreams of what you're holding in your mind aren't happening, they're not coming to fruition, then there's a delay, okay? It's time to take a look at what it is that you're trying to achieve. That would be the message, I believe, because often, prime example here, I'll use an example where people are going like, I just want my divine partner, I'm trying to manifest my soulmate or whatever, and wondering why it's not happening. Well, the fact of the matter is that when you are trying to do a manifestation that involves another person, it has to be right conditions for them and not interfere with their divine path or divine plan as well. So it's time, reflect on what it is that you're trying to achieve. There may be a valid reason for why it's not happening, besides the fact that it's not the divine time. You know, it might be the divine time for you, but not the divine time for them, if that makes sense. They may have to take some actions to be able to catch up so that when you do come together, you end up with this divine partnership role. So I guess really the primary message is you're not doing anything wrong. There's just more to the picture that you haven't quite seen yet. And just to push on and follow your internal guidance, keep that momentum up with whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. Just follow your guidance, because sometimes I believe that when we're trying to manifest and it's not the divine time, even if it doesn't involve another person, it can be a case of conditions aren't right yet, but if you continue, you will eventually manifest it. And this could be that actually you've got more information to learn and gather before this project or idea comes to fruition, if I can speak clearly. So I do have a sense of humour. When it comes to crystal care, just a reminder, I've got a video up that gives you a whole heap of options on metaphysical care. Now, my recollections with the serpentine that I had was that it actually was okay and it was fine to wash under a running tap if you just talk about general maintenance. But yes, it was crumbly and little bits of it did break off, and that would be because it's got the kaolinite in it. And because it's so soft, so you wouldn't be banging it around, you would treat it with a little bit of respect. But the reason I say a sense of humour is the best way you can care for your crystals is not actually to leave them with somebody else to care for, because you've got to go away, which is what happened to me and how I lost my collection. So you've got to look after your stuff. You've got to have a sense of humour too, and not get too upset about it when it moves on to a new house when you didn't plan for that to happen. But anyway, so yeah, crystal care is fairly straightforward. If you've got any suggestions, leave a comment. I'll just try and get through this video now because they do get long and I'm trying to make them a bit shorter. I think what I will try and do going forward is actually put the video links into the description to the videos, which are how to care for your crystals and how to attune your crystals and that kind of thing. So I'll try and remember to do that today as well for this video. But for now, though, I'm just going to say, look, thank you very much for being part of my journey. If you've made it this far, well done, congratulations. Feel free to say good day to me. Let me know what part of the world you're in. That would always be helpful. And I will love you, leave you, and catch you on the next video. Bye-bye for now.